Hi guys, here is a little video by Push Bike Engine on how to mix your oil and petrol ratios for your motorized bicycle to keep your engine well lubricated during your braking period and after that. First I'm gonna start with the oil. We recommend to use the semi-synthetic oil instead of the mineral oil. We think it lubricates the engine much better and it helps to prolong the life of your engine. Second is the ratios. Now, during your braking period, which lasts about 200 kilometers, you need to put a little bit more oil. So the perfect ratio is 40 milliliters of oil for each liter of petrol. Or what we do is, most of the people in Ireland use the 5-liter petrol drum. So you have to put 200 milliliters of oil into a 5-liter petrol drum, or two measuring cups. For your 5-liter petrol drum. After your first 200 kilometers, you should reduce your mixture to 30 milliliters for each liter of petrol, or 150 milliliters of two-stroke oil for your 5-liter petrol drum. Very important thing is, do not put more oil than you need, because first your engine is going to smoke much more. It doesn't really help with lubrication, and second, you will really have trouble starting your engine the next day, because the fluid settles down in the crankcase, and when you try to start we're going to show you in the next step why it's so important to keep the ratios exactly the way they should be, and what is the problem that results if you put too much oil into your petrol. So I'm going to show you on this engine what's going to happen if you put too much oil. So first, if you put too much oil, all the petrol and oil mixture is going to settle down here in your crankcase, and you would have to completely strip your engine apart. You would have to remove your carburetor, you would have to remove your exhaust pipe, you'd have to remove the head of the engine, the cylinder block as well, in order to put a little vacuum tube all the way down into the crankcase, and to be able to suck all the remaining two-stroke mixture out of the crankcase, just to be able to start the engine back again. It doesn't really make any damage to the engine, but it just settles down here, and then it's going to deposit on your spark plug. So it's going to prevent your spark plug from producing a nice, good, high voltage spark, which would mean that your engine is not going to run properly, and everything would have to be stripped out in order for the liquid to be sucked out of the crankcase and then put back together. So it's not going to break your engine, but it's going to involve a lot of time and a lot of labor, and it will cost you a good bit of money in order to clean out your crankcase. So that's why it's really important to stick to the mixtures. 40 milliliters per liter for the first 200 kilometers, and then 30 milliliters per liter after that. During the braking in period, I'll give you a few advices on how to operate, the best way to operate your engine during your braking in period, or during your first 200 kilometers. It's very important not to rush the bike during the braking in period, because the engine hasn't broken properly, and in order for all the components to settle down and work together, it's very important not to rush the bike and not to over rev your bike. The ideal speed should be kept is about 25 to 30 kilometers. Keep your revs in the middle of the range, and this is going to increase the life of your engine much more, and also it's going to allow it to brake in properly, and even after braking in, it will have more power and it will be more responsive. Another very important thing during braking in period is you should check all your nuts and bolts that they haven't become loose. Especially important are the mounting points of the engine. So regularly check that these nuts haven't become loose. These nuts here at the back mount, that they haven't become loose. Also check, just have a quick look on your screws and on the nuts of the head of the engine, that they haven't become loose. If you notice any loose nuts and bolts, just hand tight them. It's very important not to over tight. If you over tight this here, you're going to break the stud inside. It's going to involve a lot of repairs. It's going to cost you a lot of money. Also very important are the mounting points. If you over tight these guys here, you risk to shear the thread or even shear the stud completely, which would require all the mounting point here to be replaced. So very, very important, if you have a loose nut, just hand tight it. Very, very important, do not over tight because they will break. And you now next step is I'm going to talk about the fuel system and the fuel valve on your bicycle. One very important thing which customers often forget is every morning when they start their bike, they forget to turn on or off their fuel valve. So this little mark on your fuel valve here, this little arrow, which points to the off position on the valve or the on position on the valve. Now, quite important, when you finish using your bicycle, turn your fuel valve off. Like this, it stops the fuel from going in the carburetor. Next time you need to use your bike, just flick the valve to the on position and the fuel goes in. It's very important to observe the markings. Do not turn the button a full revolution around. The button only moves quarter of a revolution from on to off. If you turn it a full revolution all the way around, you're going to break your valve inside, and you're going to need a new replacement fuel valve. Next, I'm going to show you the fuel filter. We recommend to use, those are fuel filters that contain a mesh inside. They let the mixture to run in much more easier than the old model fuel filters. These are the old model. The filter itself is made out of fabric, so that means that it actually retains the oil inside. It lets the petrol through, but the oil stays inside the fabric, and it doesn't really flow properly through the filter itself. Those filters are much better. They don't have a fabric. They contain a mesh inside, and they only stop the dirt, but they let the fuel and oil to flow much more easier. And this is the type of fuel filters that we recommend. And now we use them on all our new bicycles. If you would like to replace your old filter, we sell them in the shop. You're more than welcome to pop in and get a new filter. I think they cost only about €5 for the new filter, and it really works much better than those old fuel filters. Next step is the choke. I'm going to show you the choke on your carburetor. This lets the air in or air out. Your choke should be always down. If someone touches your bike or whatever, if the choke is up in this position, it will close the air filter. There will be no air going into your engine, and it will be impossible to start the engine. If you keep pushing and try to start the engine while the air filter is closed, again you're going to flood your engine, and everything has to be stripped out in order for the liquid to be sucked out of the crankcase. So remember, very important thing, the choke of your carburetor should always be in the down position. That means that your air filter is open and the air can go freely into your engine. One very important tip, guys, that I would like to mention is it's gonna make your life much easier. Is if you decide not to use your bike for a couple of days, what you should do is you should empty the chamber of your carburetor here. This contains the float inside, and there is always a little bit of petrol in there. So if you don't use the bike for a couple of days, the petrol from here evaporates, and then the next time that you will try to start the bike, your bike is gonna have trouble starting, because this petrol, which has already evaporated, has to pass through the engine, allow fresh petrol to float in, and then your engine will start. So what we recommend to do is, say if you decide that you're not going to use your bike for the next couple of days, when your engine is off, when you park your bicycle, while your engine is working, you just put your fuel valve in the off position. You allow your engine to continue turning, and then the engine actually sucks out all the mixture from here, from the hoses and from the little chamber in your carburetor, burns it out. It takes about a minute. So what you do is you flick your valve into the off position, you let your engine to run. After a minute or a minute and a half, the engine is gonna turn off automatically, and that means that all your fuel system here, it's been emptied up. There is no fuel remaining here in the float, so it can't evaporate from here, and it will make your life much easier. The next time you're gonna start your engine, when you turn your valve on and you start pedaling to start your engine, you will have fresh petrol going in, and it will start much easier than if you leave your fuel sitting in here for a couple of days. In a minute we're going to bring the bike outside, and we will show you really how it works in action. Another important tip is the spark plugs. A few times it's happening that spark plugs fail. So what happens is when you ride along, you start feel like the power of your engine is going down, you're losing power, or your engine just switches off and then it refuses to start back again. In this case, 99% of the cases it's a failed spark plug. That's why your engine doesn't start again. Important tip: if you see that your engine is not starting, do not force it and try to start, because again you're going to flood the crankcase and everything has to be stripped to suck out the mixture. Best thing to do is to replace the spark plug. The two models of spark plug that we offer are so that's them. The old model was a spark plug. The reference number is Z8C. The new model is Z4C. They're more or less the same size. Try to get a proper spark plug. Do not experiment with different spark plugs. Best thing is to come over to our shop, get one spark plug off us, because a lot of times the thread here is longer, which means that as your spark plug is in, the piston is going to hit it because it goes into the engine more than that. Or you would break this pin. If this little pin breaks and starts jumping around all over your engine, it's just gonna destroy the engine. It's gonna scrape all your cylinder inside. So very important, use proper spark plugs. Really best thing to do is come over to the shop and get one of our spare parts. Do not experiment with the spark plugs, because they have different sizes. Some of them are longer, which means that they are not the right size for your engine. You risk to cause a lot of damage if you don't use the proper spark plug. Okay, next I'm gonna give you a few tips about the chain and the chain idler. Now, during the breaking in period, after you get a brand new bike, your chain has never been used. It has never worked. So after you start running your bike, obviously the chain takes all the strain from the engine, and she has to push the weight of the rider. So during the first 200 kilometers, the chain is subjected to a little bit of stretch. So it's very important that you keep an eye on your idler, and you keep an eye on the correct tightness of your chain. Your chain shouldn't be too loose, because it's gonna make it jump off the sprocket, and it shouldn't be too tight either, because if you tighten it too much, you're gonna overstretch your chain. If it's too loose, the chain will be flopping about, and the vibrations of the engine and also the rotation of the wheel is gonna cause the chain to jump out of the sprocket. Most of the time, the chain goes between the sprocket and your spokes, causing damage to the wheel, twists the spokes, and causes a lot of hassle that you don't want. So ideally you should keep an eye on your chain idler here. Make sure your nut here is always tight. Make sure that the wheel is your chain idler wheel is in the correct position, that the chain is subjected to the right amount of tension, not too much, not too little either, so that your chain rotates properly and gives you works and doesn't give you troubles. We recommend to use the Loctite blue thread locker glue. If you put this a little bit on this nut, it just helps this nut not to come loose, because this nut is subjected to a lot of vibrations from the chain and from the engine, so it tends to loosen it, and this glue really helps it to stay in place and to maintain the right tension on your chain. Okay, next guys, I'm going to show you about the clutch. Very important, during breaking in period, your clutch is getting worn in, starts to work. There is a rotating part inside here, which is subject to quite a lot of pressure, quite a lot of wear and tear. So basically we recommend to keep an eye on your clutch. Make sure that the wire here is always under tension, like I'm going to demonstrate now. See, when you squeeze it, there is no play whatsoever. When you squeeze your clutch lever on your handlebars, the clutch goes in and out. there is no play, there is no looseness, everything is nice and tight. If your clutch gets worn, this here starts to be a little bit loose. You feel it on your clutch lever. When you squeeze your clutch lever, you squeeze the lever, but this does not move, which means that your clutch is getting worn out and it needs to be adjusted slightly. The best thing to do is, you know, every now and then, once a month or so, if you could pop in the shop for a clutch adjustment, that, you know, means that you can run your engine without problems. You know, it's very important to keep your clutch happy, because those are consumable parts, they're perishable parts. They need to the rotating part inside needs to be renewed average once every 6 months, and those are basically the clutch pads. So you see, this is a worn out pad. You can see like it's completely destroyed. That's a brand new pad. You can see the thickness of it. You know, you can see just the condition of this and the condition of this. They are subject to a lot of strain because they pull the rider along, you know, and it gets operated all the time at every traffic light when you stop. So it's pretty important to keep these in good condition. Look after your clutch, pop into the shop to get it adjusted, or replace your pads when needed in order to avoid trouble with your clutch, and, you know, just run your engine as efficiently as possible. And by the way, handy thing to do is every now and then, if you could pop your air filter out once a month or once every 2 months, pop this cover out. It's only 2 screws on this side here. You just release the 2 screws, the cover comes out. Inside there is a little mesh that you can clean and, you know, or wash under the water and then let it dry, because it does get clogged with a lot of dust and, you know, dirt from the air, and it doesn't let the air go into your carb properly. So really easy, 2 screws, cover off, you wash the little mesh, let it dry, put everything back in, so you get the correct fuel to air ratio mixture in your carb, and that means that, you know, engine runs at full power, runs smoothly, and you know, starts easily and all this. So guys, here we started the engine to show you how to empty the carb. So the engine is running at the moment. What you do is, if you're not going to use the bike 2 or 3 days, you come in, you flick your valve into the off position, put your valve into the off position like so, and then you just let the engine to continue running. The engine keeps running, it sucks out the fuel from the hose and from the carburetor. So there you go, the carb is nearly empty. You can see the revs are picking up, it's about to switch off. As I say, all the system now is completely drained, your carb is empty. When the engine switches off, the system is drained. Next time that you jump on your bike, there you go, the engine is off. So after it does that, you leave your valve off. So say in 2 or 3 days time, when you open your valve, there will be fresh petrol. Your engine will start much easier than if you leave the valve on and there is residual petrol here, which would have evaporated, and it will make it much more difficult to start. So remember guys, the main points that you should remember before you start is check that your engine is tight, all your engine mountings are not loose or anything, that your carburetor choke is down, very important. If it's up, it's not going to start. Carburetor choke is down, that your fuel valve is on, in the on position. Remember also that always start your bike with cycling and then you release the clutch. Do not try to start it when it's in idle position. Always wear your helmet, your high-vis vest. Make sure that your lights are on in the front and in the rear. Very important, obey the rules of the road, and do not use your engine in public areas or pedestrian-only streets. And be safe out there. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you find this manual useful and the little tips that I gave you. If you have any questions guys, visit our website pushbikeengine.ie. We have an online shop if you need to buy any spare parts, or you are more than welcome to come into our shop. We are in Unit 52A, Ravensdale Park, Kimmage, Dublin 12. It's near to KCR Junction. It's in the KCR Industrial Estate. We'll be more than happy to look after you. Thanks for watching. I hope you find the tips useful.